In Part 3, Iduma marches toward Ogudoro as the river's judgment. Queen Maku pleads with him, but he remains resolute. The seer exposes the royal betrayal, Obanif breaks under guilt, and fear grips the kingdom. As Iduma's shadow falls, the sky ignites, and the river sings his name. Judgment has begun. The first to see him was a girl by the well, barefoot, holding a wooden bowl of cassava flour. Her eyes went wide, and her bowl crashed to the ground. A scream tore through her throat like a curse. Then the silence broke. "He's here," someone cried. "Run." In seconds, Ogudoro dissolved into chaos. Traders abandoned their stalls, baskets overturned, yams and plantains rolled into the dirt. Children wailed as mothers pulled them toward any shelter they could find. Goats scattered, chickens flapped frantically into the air, and pots shattered under panicked feet. The sound was deafening shouts, gasps, the frantic shuffle of feet against dry earth. But beneath all that, something deeper pulsed. The ground trembled. Down the main village path, Iduma moved like a storm-given form. His enormous golden serpent body undulated in steady waves, each scale shimmering faintly as if lit from within. He glided without resistance, golden snakes forming a perimeter around him like devoted sentries. His eyes, ancient and unforgiving, swept over the village like judgment passed. Overhead, the sky mirrored the tension. Clouds churned in unnatural spirals, colored with a crimson hue as though they'd been bruised by divine rage. Thunder cracked deep and layered, as if the gods themselves were speaking in tongues. Lightning flashed, not white, but blood red, slashing across the heavens like angry sigils carved in the sky. Then the river stirred. It began as a whisper, a soft gurgle, a trembling ripple across the surface. But quickly, the banks trembled. The water bubbled violently, then surged upward, spilling over its edge like a beast set free. It didn't flood outward. It rose, coiling into a vertical column of liquid power, twisting toward the clouds like it had come to reclaim the sky. From the stone steps of the temple, Elder Agilo stood unmoved. His voice rose above the chaos, not shouting, but singing ancient words in the tongue of the river goddess. His eyes were closed, face turned toward the heavens, hands trembling as he summoned the long-forgotten spirits of Ogudoro's oldest covenant. And the spirits answered. In the clouds above, ghostly figures shimmered into form, translucent beings of water and mist. Some wore crowns of river grass, others had arms like flowing currents. They circled slowly, solemn and bright, like sentinels remembering a debt long buried. People stopped running, just for a moment. And in that breathless pause, Queen Maku stepped forward. Her gown clung to her legs, soaked from where she had stumbled through the shallows, but she didn't care. Her breath came heavy, her eyes rimmed with tears. Yet her voice, when she raised it, was strong, cutting through the panic like a bell through fog. "Stop," she cried. "Please, do not run from him." The crowd faltered. Some slowed. Others turned to look at her, confusion battling with terror in their eyes. "He is not here to destroy you," Maku continued, stepping into the village square. "He is here because we failed him. Because I turned our back on the promise made to the river. But we can still choose what happens next." She turned slowly, her eyes locking with the shadow of the serpent approaching the shrine. He had not spoken. He did not need to. His presence said everything. Power radiated from him, ancient and divine. "You're afraid because you do not understand," Maku went on, her voice trembling now. "But if we face this with truth, with reverence, maybe the river will remember our humanity." A low hum rolled through the sky. The spirits in the air paused. Iduma stopped. For a long moment, the only sound was the water roaring behind him and the wind whistling through the broken shrine gates. Elder Agilo's chant faltered, then resumed softer now, like a plea. And then the river pulsed. Once, twice. A voice not quite human, not fully divine, rippled through the sky in a language no one had heard in generations. Every head in Ogudoro turned upward. The river had begun to speak. The palace gates groaned as if in mourning, their old iron hinges trembling against the weight of what approached. Dust spiraled into the air as Iduma crossed the threshold, his serpent body gliding over the marble with terrifying grace. His scales shimmered with unnatural gold, reflecting broken fragments of palace columns, scorched banners, and the wide-eyed fear of the few remaining guards who dared to look upon him. The golden snakes that had flanked him throughout the journey began to slither outward in organized rhythm, forming a silent wall of watchful sentinels. Their bodies coiled around pillars, across the floor, up the staircases, each one still, alert, glowing faintly in the dim torchlight. Not one hissed. Not one blinked. They simply made space for what was to come. Inside the throne room, the air had turned sour with fear. The once grand hall, now cracked and darkened by time and guilt, stood frozen in anticipation. And on the throne, King Ogudoro waited. He sat slouched, the weight of age and consequence heavy on his once proud shoulders. His crimson robe hung limply, damp with sweat. His hands trembled slightly as he gripped the armrests, not from the cold, but from the shame that had slowly consumed him. There had been no sleep, no peace, only nightmares. And now they stood before him. The great serpent entered in full, head high, eyes locked forward. The room pulsed with power. Ogudoro rose slowly. His knees cracked under his own weight. He looked smaller now, no longer a ruler, but a relic. A man facing the reckoning he had buried in the forest years ago. "So," he rasped, voice hollow, "you've returned." Iduma's voice echoed, not from his mouth, but from the walls, the floor, the air itself. "You cast me into the wild, to die." Ogudoro swallowed hard. "I was told you were dangerous, that you were not human. And what are you?" Iduma hissed. "A man who breaks covenants with gods? Who discards his own blood to protect his pride?" The torches flared. Ogudoro stumbled down the steps of the throne, each step louder than the last. "I didn't know what you were. I was afraid. They said if the kingdom found out." "You were the kingdom," Iduma interrupted, coiling slowly, deliberately around the edge of the chamber. "You spoke the words. You made the vow. You married the woman blessed by the river goddess. And yet when she bore what you asked for, you called it cursed." Ogudoro's breath came shallow. "I was wrong. I see it now. The river, the signs, your return, everything. It was true. It was always true." And still, Iduma's tone darkened. "You let them take me. Alone. A child, your child, cast into the wilderness." Ogudoro dropped to his knees, eyes glassy. "I regret it. Every night since. The screams, the thunder, the droughts. I thought they were punishment for a decision, but now I see they were warnings. I should have listened." Iduma lowered his head, nostrils flaring. The room filled with the scent of river mist and something older, something divine and dangerous. Ogudoro lifted his hands. "I cannot undo the past, but I offer my life, my throne. Whatever the river wants, take it. Just spare the people." For a moment, silence. And then Iduma moved forward, slowly, until his massive golden head loomed just inches from the broken king. His eyes glowed, not with rage, but something deeper. Sorrow, memory, judgment. "I am not here for your throne," Iduma whispered, each word heavy as a mountain. "I am not here for vengeance." Ogudoro's lips parted in relief. "I am here," Iduma continued, "because the river demands what was promised." Ogudoro blinked, confused. "Then, what is left to give?" "The truth," Iduma answered. And with that, a pulse of golden light burst outward from his chest, flooding the room. Visions appeared in midair, Queen Maku's tears as she sang to a newborn, Ogudoro's signature sealing the pact scroll, the moment the guards carried a swaddled serpent child deep into the woods and left him beneath the thunder sky. The illusions flickered, burned into the minds of every servant watching from the shadows. No one would unsee it. No one would forget. Obenknife collapsed fully, sobbing into his robe. I was weak, he choked. I feared what people would say, what the elders would do. I feared losing the crown. You lost everything the moment you betrayed the river, Iduma replied. And then he turned. Without another word, the great serpent slithered away, his tail coiling like an ancient ribbon of gold. The golden snakes followed in a wave, retreating down the marbled corridors as if guided by divine rhythm. Behind them, King Obenknife knelt alone in the ruins of his throne room, surrounded by silence, by truth, and by the bitter weight of too-late redemption. The ground quaked softly beneath their feet, not with the violence of destruction, but with the heaviness of something ancient waking. Inside the palace, whispers floated through the air like threads of mist, weaving their way into the ears of guards, servants, and elders alike. Every torch flickered. Every shadow shifted. Then, from the open archway leading to the temple courtyard, came a sound unlike anything they had ever heard. It was not thunder, not wind, not chanting. It was the sound of presence, an arrival that needed no introduction. The air turned thick and damp, like the breath of a storm before it broke. And then, as if born from the earth itself, the river goddess Iduma appeared. She did not walk. She did not glide. She rose, a towering form of flowing water and light, shaped like a woman but deeper than human. Her hair cascaded like liquid silver, and her eyes were rivers, ancient, mournful, and endless. When she spoke, her voice was not hers alone. It carried the weight of waterfalls, of rains uncounted, of every riverbed her hands had carved. I have waited, Iduma said, and her words made the courtyard trees bow in reverence. Waited through betrayal, through silence, through years of stolen honor. Elders gathered outside the temple, eyes wide, robes trembling. Some fell to their knees. Others simply wept. It was no longer a question of belief. The stories were real. The covenant had been broken. And the reckoning was not symbolic, it had come. From the edge of the palace steps, Queen Maku stood frozen. Her face reflected a storm of emotions, grief, awe, hope. She had spoken to the goddess once in dreams. But now the dreams stood in front of her, made of wind and water and fury. Iduma raised one arm, and the sacred waters from the river behind the palace lifted into the air. They did not fall or flow, they rose, as if drawn to her command. The currents coiled like ribbons above the villagers' heads, dancing in impossible patterns. The debt, Iduma said, is not owed by one man. Her gaze turned toward the palace, toward where Obenknife still knelt, head bowed low in broken silence. The debt is carried by legacy, by the pride passed down, the silence upheld, the betrayal accepted as tradition. For years, you gained. Your lands flourished. Your fields overflowed. And still, you let the truth drown beneath your own reflection. The elders began to tremble. Agilo stepped forward, voice tight with desperation. Then what must we do, O Mother of Rivers? How can we restore what has been lost? Iduma turned her head toward him, and her eyes softened, just slightly. The river does not forget, but it can cleanse. Not through denial, not through sacrifice, through truth, through memory, through humility. Suddenly, a low hum began, soft, steady. The golden snakes that had followed Iduma now curled along the temple steps, their bodies glowing faintly. And from their ranks emerged Iduma himself, silent and still. Iduma looked at him, and for a breathless moment, they simply stared, child and creator. The energy between them crackled with power, with history. You were my promise, she said to him. Born not of sin, but of covenant. You are not vengeance. You are reminder. Iduma bowed his head, his coils tightening around the courtyard pillars, anchoring him. The river above them surged higher. And then Iduma turned to the people, elders, villagers, children clutching their mothers. The flood will come, she said, her voice now laced with finality. Not to destroy, but to wash. To awaken. You will either rise with it, or be swept away. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Some tried to flee. Others clung to the earth as though it could protect them. The sky darkened, not with storm, but with memory. Visions shimmered above them, echoes of the past, of Maku's tearful pact, of Obanife's deceit, of Iduma's cries echoing in the forest alone. And the water, sacred, sentient, fell in a single drop that landed on the temple stone. It sizzled like fire. Judgment had not ended. It had just been announced. The courtyard outside the palace glistened beneath the golden light of suspended river water, tendrils of liquid curling and swaying in the air like strands of living memory. The people of Ogudoro knelt in silence, unsure if they were witnessing a miracle, a judgment, or the end. Elder Agilo had fallen to his knees, whispering prayers in a language long forgotten. The guards were nowhere to be seen. Even the wind had quieted, as if afraid to speak. Queen Maku stepped forward. Her sandals slid on the damp marble, and her knees met the earth with a dull thud. She bowed low, her forehead to the ground, her trembling hands outstretched, not in protest, but in surrender. "Please," she whispered, her voice shaking the silence. "Let it be me." Iduma stirred. His enormous body remained still, but his head lowered slightly, his glowing amber eyes fixed on the woman who had birthed him and abandoned him. The firelight from the sacred waters shimmered against his scales. He said nothing, but the tension in his coils told the story. Something inside him cracked. Iduma, the river goddess, tilted her head. Her form rippled, still fluid and divine, her silver hair cascading like waterfalls over her translucent shoulders. "You kneel before your son," she said, voice both warm and unyielding. "Why now?" "Because I remember," Maku said. "I remember the night I held him for the first time. I remember how his eyes found mine, even then. I remember the way he wrapped his tiny fingers around mine as if I were the whole world. I remember, and I regret." Around them, the sacred waters shimmered, and from them, visions bloomed. The courtyard faded into scenes of the past. Maku cradling a newborn, her eyes puffy from tears, yet soft with wonder. Her humming a lullaby under moonlight. The baby's tail slipping around her wrist as she rocked him. Her whispering, "You are not a curse. You are my miracle." But the visions shifted. A younger Maku arguing with court elders, her voice rising, her hands shaking, her gaze glancing toward a crib behind a screen, then away. Her fear, her silence. The moment she turned her back, the baby's cries echoed faintly, unanswered. The memory dissolved. Now back in the present, Maku raised her face. "I failed him. I let fear win. And when they cast him out, I remained silent. So, if a price must be paid, let it be me. Spare them. Spare this land." The villagers gasped. Even Elder Agilo turned, stunned. Iduma's body shifted. He coiled tighter, pressing his massive form against the marble edge of the temple. His jaw clenched. He did not speak. "Mothers are not perfect," Maku continued, rising slowly but keeping her head bowed. "But we remember. We carry. I have carried this pain for years. And if it will ease his, if it will stop this blood from falling, I offer myself. Take me." Iduma remained silent, her watery form flickering. Her gaze moved to Iduma. "This is not mine to answer," she said, voice softening. "The child carries the wound. The child must choose." The stillness that followed was unbearable. Iduma's eyes locked onto his mother's. They glowed, but within them, war raged. The fury, the betrayal, the abandonment, but also the flicker of memory. The lullaby. The embrace. The soft kiss she once placed on his brow beneath the stars. He lowered his head further until his nose brushed the hem of her wrapper. His breath was heavy, his voice like stone dragged across riverbed. "You left me." Maku's lips quivered. "Yes, They told you I was unholy, that I was a mistake, and you believed them. Her tears ran freely now. I did. And now, he hissed, you want to die for them? No, she said. I want to live for you. That struck something deep. Iduma recoiled slightly, not in anger, but confusion. You still call me your son? He asked. She stepped forward, barely a foot from his massive head. I always did, even when I was afraid, even when I tried to forget. You were always my son, and I am not asking you to forget. I am asking you to choose something more. Iduma watched quietly, her form beginning to dim with thought. Then, with a sudden tremble, Iduma uncoiled his body. He rose high, his silhouette casting a vast shadow over the palace walls. The golden snakes slithered back, unsure. The air grew cold. He turned to the villagers. You call me God, he said, his voice deep and unrelenting. But gods do not feel pain. I have bled it. I have lived it. And now you want forgiveness when you offered none to a crying child in the dark. No one answered. The silence said enough. He turned again to Maku. And his eyes, those eyes that once stared from a cradle into hers, flashed gold. He said nothing more, and Iduma, for the first time, seemed uncertain. The judgment still hung in the air, but the moment was no longer fire. It was breath, waiting to see if the next word would heal or shatter. The riverbank had transformed. What was once a humble crossing lined with palm fronds and trading canoes now blazed with supernatural fury. A path of fire spiraled across the sand, snaking out from the river's heart like a divine wound. The flames didn't burn the earth, they floated just above it, vibrant and alive, crackling with judgment. The villagers stood in a wide, trembling circle, faces lit orange by the flickering light. No one moved. No one dared speak. From the center of the river, the goddess Iduma hovered, her towering form forged from water and moonlight, her hair cascading like waterfalls, eyes glowing like twin suns. When she spoke, it wasn't loud, but every tree, every stone, every heart heard her. One soul, she said, her voice rippling across the village like thunder dipped in sorrow. One to bear the weight of generations. The river does not forget. The river must be fed. Gasps and murmurs erupted at once. People turned on each other with frantic, wide eyes. A woman clutched her baby and backed away. An elder pointed a trembling finger toward the palace. It was them. The royals made the pact, not us. But we all benefited, another shouted. Our harvests, our sons, our peace. Don't pretend we were innocent. Voices rose higher. Accusations flung like stones. A man shoved his neighbor. A group of young men surrounded a noblewoman, her fine wrapper now soaked in sweat. Offer them, one yelled. Let the house that brought the curse pay for it. No more blood. Elder Agilo bellowed from his knees, arms raised. We cannot heal by sacrificing truth. But it was too late. Tensions boiled. Generations of hidden resentment surged like floodwaters. Cries for justice, for vengeance, for mercy tangled in the air. The fire hissed as if feeding on the chaos. Then, a voice cut through the storm. Small, steady, unmistakably clear. I will speak. The crowd fell into stunned silence. A child no older than 9 stepped forward, barefoot, his tunic tattered, but eyes burning with purpose. He walked toward the fire. People tried to grab him, stop him, but the flames parted gently, letting him pass. He stood before the goddess, tiny and unshaken. My name is Obi, he said. My father told me the stories. He said the river gave us a prince, and we threw him away. He said kings feared the child more than they feared dishonor. A shudder rippled through the crowd. Even the wind seemed to halt. I'm just a child, Obi continued. But I know lies when I see them. The royals made the pact. But he turned to the villagers, we watched. We let it happen. We called him monster. We shut our doors when he cried. Tears filled Queen Maku's eyes. Iduma, nearby, stared with unreadable eyes. Obi turned back to the goddess. So don't ask us to pick someone. It's not about one person. It's all of us. We're the soul. Gasps, some sobs, swept through the crowd. Iduma gazed down at the boy, her form flickering as if considering the weight of what had just been said. The sacred flames around him didn't consume, they shimmered, calm and listening. Then the goddess raised her hand. The river stilled. The fire paused mid-burn. A trial had begun, but its outcome would no longer rest on a name. It would rest on a truth no one could now deny. Twilight descended over Ogudoro, but there was no peace in its coming. The sky, heavy with storm clouds, cracked open with streaks of red lightning. Thunder grumbled like a buried god awakening. Wind howled through the trees, kicking dust into the panicked streets. Fires from overturned stalls danced in the distance, casting the village in a feverish glow. Screams still echoed. Somewhere, a woman cried out for her child. Somewhere else, a man begged the river for mercy. And from the highest point, coiled atop the temple's stone roof, like a living prophecy, Iduma watched it all. His golden scales shimmered under the bruised sky. His eyes, ancient and unreadable, scanned the chaos below, men fighting each other to flee, elders weeping into the earth, mothers pressing trembling lips to their children's foreheads. He could hear their hearts beating in terror. He could smell the guilt rising from the ground like smoke. He could feel the memory of their betrayal, fresh as the day it happened. But even in the midst of their fear, something stirred within him. The serpent blinked, and in the silence between thunder, memory returned. A younger self, cold, starving, crawling through wet grass. The taste of mud when there was no food. The endless nights listening to the river's whispers because no one else would speak to him. Faces turning away, doors slamming shut, being called a curse, a beast, a mistake. The voice of Queen Maku begging the gods, please, don't let him die out there. He remembered that voice. And now, as the storm built behind him, he heard it again. He turned his head slowly. There, at the center of the courtyard below, Queen Maku knelt. Her face lifted toward the heavens, soaked in wind and rain. Her voice was not loud. It was not desperate. It was steady, soft, and it carried something heavier than judgment, grief. Forgive us, she whispered. If I must bear the pain of our wrongs, let it be so. But please, remember the lullabies I sang. Remember my hands, my voice, the way I held you when you were small. And then her body shimmered faintly. A glow, not of magic, but of love, pulsed around her form like the softest light. Iduma inhaled deeply. The wind around him quieted, just slightly. He closed his eyes. For a moment, he saw her as she once was, rocking him by the riverside, cradling him in trembling arms, humming a melody that carried no language but all the safety in the world. He opened his eyes again. Below, villagers still screamed, but it all sounded far away now. The flame inside him flickered. Not extinguished, but shaken. A crack had formed in the stone of his vengeance, and through it, something warm tried to break through. Maku's glow pulsed once more, and the serpent, so feared, so powerful, so divine, lowered his head, just slightly, toward her. His coils loosened. His chest heaved, though he had no lungs. His tongue flicked the air. And, for the first time since his return, Iduma did not move forward. He hesitated. The world vanished into water. One moment, Iduma stood amidst chaos and storm, and the next, he was submerged in silence. But it was not drowning, it was awakening. The river cradled him, not with waves, but with memory. Darkness swirled around his massive form, yet it was not empty. It pulsed with ancient life. Then, she appeared. Iduma. The river goddess shimmered beneath the surface, her form not bound by flesh, but flowing like water in the shape of a woman, tall, regal, crowned in lilies and woven mist. Her eyes were the color of stormlight, her voice the hush of tides. She didn't speak with words, but Iduma heard her clearly. "Come," she whispered, and with a gentle current, pulled him deeper. The water parted to reveal visions like mirrors in motion. Iduma watched, breathless. Centuries rolled back before him. He saw the founding king of Ogudoro, proud and cunning, standing beside the river's edge. He was not alone. A younger Iduma stood across from him, offering a pact, blessing for loyalty, life for reverence. The king had knelt, sworn fealty, and accepted the river's grace. Iduma gave him a child, not of her flesh, but of her power, a golden son, marked by the waters. But the king broke his word. In secret, he used the river's gift to wage war, to conquer neighboring lands, to feed ambition rather than gratitude. When Iduma demanded justice, he cast the child away, fearing a divine claim to his throne. The kingdom praised him. The child vanished. The waters turned cold. Iduma gasped. He had not been the first. Iduma turned to him again. Her voice flowed through him like a current of sorrow and truth. "You are not punishment, Iduma. You are the bridge between what was and what must be." His chest ached with the weight of understanding. He was not born to destroy Ogudoro, but to force it to face what it had buried. He was not just Maku's son, nor a curse cast aside. He was the voice of every promise broken and every child forgotten. The river around him began to rise. And as he emerged slowly toward the surface, the fire in the sky above Ogudoro seemed to pause, waiting for his return. The first light of dawn crept timidly across the scorched horizon, painting the battered village in a soft, sorrowful gold. Smoke drifted above crumbled huts, and the river glowed faintly, as though it, too, was holding its breath. For the first time in hours, Ogudoro was quiet, not from peace, but exhaustion. Queen Maku, bruised by prayer and grief, knelt in the palace courtyard. Her arms slackened, her head dipped, and then she collapsed, the weight of hope too heavy to carry. A soft cry escaped the crowd, but no one moved. None dared interrupt the moment. King Openknife was nowhere to be seen. Inside the shattered throne room, the crown of Ogudoro, once proudly displayed atop a carved pedestal, trembled. Without warning, it toppled, landing on the cold stone with a hollow clang. A long, jagged crack split through its center. The metal flaked, the old symbols dulled, until a strange light pulsed from within. Slowly, the crown fell apart, and at its heart, etched deep into the base, glowed a serpent coiled in gold. Outside, Iduma raised his head. His golden eyes narrowed on the rising sun, but his gaze drifted toward the palace. The mark, it matched his own. He hissed softly, uncertain. Was this fate? Or another lie? Before he could move, lightning tore across the sky, bright, violent, red. And from somewhere, neither sky nor earth, came a voice. Soft, familiar, calling his name. Iduma. He froze. Every creature stilled. The wind itself dared not breathe. And just like that, judgment paused. But only for a heartbeat. To be continued. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to subscribe to this channel and turn on the notification bell so you'll be the first to know when Part 5 drops. You won't want to miss what happens next.